ladies and gentlemen. Lovely to see you all, and thanks for attending tonight's webinar as part of the overall Communities of Practice series that's being facilitated by each of the home countries. Tonight's topic is about track, but I won't steal the limelight from two of my colleagues on that. Just as a kind of refresher of what I've kind of just articulated, if you would like to turn your camera off as this session is being recorded, completely understand. And also if you're able to put yourselves on mute just to avoid the background noise. I'm very pleased to say that we've got two very talented and knowledgeable presenters to discuss or to present tonight's topic. And I have to say I'm not going to steal your limelight any further, gentlemen. So, Noel, do you want to introduce yourself first?
Yeah. Good evening, everybody. For those who don't know who I am, my name's the first one there, Noel McCackley. I'm a level 4 track official. And just to give you a bit of background, I qualified as a track official back in 2004. So I'm coming up to nearly 20 years experience. And I must say, I've had a lot of years as a track referee during that time. So I do hope today, during this meeting, I'll be able to answer as many of your questions about the role of being a track referee at a county or league meeting. And I hope to share as much information of what I've learned and what you can expect if you're aspiring to do to go as a track referee in the future, either at a league meeting or a county championships in the future. So please, at this meeting, ask many questions as you can. We're here, we've got the knowledge, and we want you to come out of this meeting, get as much experience as you need on how to be a track referee at a county or league meetings. So I'll now pass you to Dominic, who's going to share some of the slides with me during this presentation of this webinar.
Evening all. So I'm Dom Ellis. I have been a track official now for this is my 7th season. I'm also a level 4. As Noel said, ask as many questions as you want. I've not been around as long as Noel, but I've picked up a thing or two along the way, mostly by mithering the likes of Noel and asking lots of questions. So please do feel comfortable. Ask away. There are no silly questions. So without further ado, we'll start working our way through the slides then.
Just to let you know, with these slides, to share the role, what we're going to do is we're going to take each slide at a time. So rather than me doing all the slides, I'll do read about one slide, then Dominic will do the next slide. So it just breaks it up a little bit. So we've got a bit of variation into the different voices that are speaking about each aspects of each different slides. So I've got the first one, as you can see, track referee, main duties. For those who probably don't know much about being a referee and what it's like, the main duties of a track referee, basically you're in charge of all track events that's going on around the track. You are responsible for everything that goes around as you do being a track referee. Allocating duties to track judges and umpires. That basically involves before the start, you would have a duty sheet. And you've done a bit of preparation before the event, and you'd have a duty sheet, and with that you actually allocate all the duties to your track judges and umpires that have actually been appointed for the role at this either league meeting or county championship. So that's one of your main duties as being a track referee. One of the others as well is deciding the event of any difference of opinions between the track judges, and the track referee's decision shall be final. So that could be a situation where there's been a close race, 100 meters, for example, and on the stand, they're just not sure between some positions, and the chief judge perhaps would then ask the referee to make the final decision on the placing of athletes in the race. So it does happen, but the idea is the referee will make that final decision. Administering the rules of the competition relating to disqualifications of athletes. Yes, we'll come to that a bit later in this presentation, but one of your jobs is, if you do have to disqualify an athlete, you administrate it as per rule book. So there's rule numbers in the rule book, and you refer to that and the reasons for the disqualifications if you do need to speak to an athlete or a team. Dealing with any disputed points as provided by the rules for the competition. Again, if there's anything that's coming up that's going to be needed clarification or sorting out, you as the referee would then look at the rules with the people involved just to clarify any points or anything that's not clear and sort those situations out on the day, preferably. And has the authority to declare the race a void and be held again later in the day or on a later day. I'm going to be honest with you, I've never had a race held on another day, but a race voided, yes, it has happened. And if it does happen to you, you've just got to justify the reason why. And the last bit, which isn't a main duties, but I just thought I'd mention it, you really need to be a level 2. You should be a level 2 or above to act as a track referee at any league or county championships. Yes, so a level 2. And I know some of you here, hopefully aspiring to get to a level 2 and be a track referee. Yeah, you need to be a level 2 and above. So just questions. Anybody got any quick questions on that before I move to the next slide? Because I know it said question and answers at the end, but just any questions on that before we move to the next slide? No? Anything in the chat?
No, I think we're all good.
Okay.
No.
Dominic.
Smashing it. So yeah, I'll take a minute and we'll go through some of the qualities and some of the skills that a good track referee needs. Now, I'm not going to talk through all of them on the slides, but I will talk about a few of the more important ones, or the ones that are worth of note. Things like being firm but fair. Unfortunately, as a track referee, we do have to make some challenging decisions at times. There may be decisions that are not always popular with everybody involved, but it is really, really important that we are consistent and take a fair approach for all athletes involved in an event and not just particular ones. Being alert and safety conscious is an absolute must. Being aware of your surroundings, certainly things like signposting your teams not to go and walk across the infield at a local level match, especially when you've got long throws going on, because the last thing you want as a referee is one of your team being injured by whatever is being thrown around. Knowledge of the rules as well. So as a track referee, Noel's already said, you're in charge of a team. You need to be able to know the rules that apply to the discipline, apply to the events that are taking place, so you can properly discharge the rule book on the day. Being calm, again, you may face challenges as a track referee, and we do have some slides further on in today's session looking at things like disqualifications. Being able to take a very calm approach always leads to a better outcome for everybody involved. Being a good communicator, again, we do talk to athletes in the referee role, and being able to talk to them on a level that athletes understand, especially the youngest athletes, your under 11s, your under 13s, being able to make a point and get it across to them well is really, really important, because it is, part of the rule is to educate athletes at times on the rules that actually apply, because there's not always somebody else there to tell them. Finally, a sense of humor and a love of the sport are really key. It's, you can spend quite a lot of time on a judge's stand, as many of you will already know as track judges. So being able to have a little bit of banter and a bit of fun along the way is really key, and makes a day for yourself and your teams of officials. And finally, as a referee, you may be working with either some level 1 trainee officials or very new level 1s. And you may be getting asked a lot of questions by them. So it's part of the role as well to be able to mentor and have those discussions and answer questions where you can with officials who are still learning the trade and developing.
There is one question in the chat, Dominic, about the need to be physically fit, and kind of obviously as part of the kind of being as inclusive as possible within officiating as to whether individuals with kind of a form of disability can fulfill that role.
Yeah, so I can see the first half of the question, Mark, in the chat, but my team seems to be cutting out the bottom half. So at local level, as referees, we do spend time, say moving hurdles or lifting equipment around. There are certainly workarounds. You don't need to be able to go and pull a trolley with 70 hurdles on or be able to lift and shift everything. And it's all about being able to work with your team of judges. So if there is something you can't do, and it's happened plenty of times to me when I've worked through the levels of having referees go, actually, I can't lift these hurdles, Dom. Can you do it, please? This is where they need to go. And just ensuring that if there is anything, that you're not in a position to be able to do, that you're working with your team of officials, or whether it be a technical team, if you've got the tech manager and clerks of the course, or stadium staff, just to ensure that your key things like hurdles, where there is a little bit of more of a physical aspect, are covered through the day and everything is set up correctly.
Thank you very much. That's perfect. Thank you very much.
Next slide. Right. What other items a referee then would bring in a bag? So apart from what you would normally have as a referee myself, these are just some examples of what I would have in my bag when I go to a meeting. The first one would be a duty sheet. I always try and prepare and have a duty sheet when I go to a meeting. It's so that I can make sure that I've allocated the duties to those that have been appointed. I always advise as well, if you can, as a referee, to appoint a chief judge. And the reason why I do that is just in case you as a referee has been called away to deal with any incidents, infringements or queries. So if you do have a duty sheet, try and appoint a chief judge to make your job a little bit easier if you need to go away. So that's one of the things that's in my bag. Similar briefing notes. What are you going to say to your team when you get there on the stand? So I do have some briefing notes. I've put optional because some referees will just say what they need to say without having any notes. But I like to have a note to make sure I don't miss any particular points that I want to address or get through to my team of officials on the day. Rule book, yes, as a referee you would expect to have some knowledge of the rules, but it's always nice to have a rule book to refer to just in case something needs to be clarified. And if you do have the rule book, just make sure it's the latest one so it's up to date. And what I do on my rule book, I do have little coloured slips on the top so I know which section I need to go to quickly to refer to. So I put little coloured tabs on mine so I know straight away if there's something I need to look at, an infringement, a lane rule, I've got it straight away. So yep, I'll have a rule book with me. And also infringement forms. If you do have to disqualify someone, it's appropriate that you fill in an infringement report form. So again, I have some which are for relays, ordinary ones that are non-relays, WPA, which is basically the the ones where it's disability, so have those. And if you're ever wondering where to find the infringement report forms, they're actually available on the UKA website. And if you go onto the officials resources under Track Judge, you'll see a whole list of the infringement report forms. They're available in A5 or A4. So always handy to have some of those in your bag. Coloured signalling cards. Again, the reason why I have those is because if I'm appointed people out on different areas around the track and I need to spot an infringement, I give them yellow infringement cards so that they can raise that straight away if they see an infringement, and then I can spot it and I can either go there quickly and see that umpire to get a decision on what's happened, what, where, when it happened, and then I can make a decision on that. So a coloured signalling card is quite useful as a way of communicating to your umpires when they spot an infringement. Results pad. Technically, the host where you are at the meeting, they should provide you with the results pads. But again, if you've got some spares, it's great just in case the host haven't provided it. Sometimes some of the hosts think, well, you're the referee, you should have them in your bag already. So they don't have any. But like I say, I'm just prepared in case. So I carry some spare results pads. Lap charts. As a referee, it was always nice to have lap charts to give out to your team when it's the longer distance races, and the lap charts are used for races above 1500. So anything that's a mile upwards, you have lap charts. If you're at perhaps a county championships level, it's always good to have lap charts, and they need to be signed, just in case there's any queries about the amount of laps that the athlete ran in a race. So I usually have some pre-printed lap charts with a signature at the bottom signed by the official after the race to say that they actually ran the correct distance and they ran all the laps in that particular race. Another thing is a hurdle crib sheet, and it's really important that when you are going around the track and you're adjusting the hurdles, you make sure that they're the correct height and the correct weight for each particular race. So I've got a little hurdle crib sheet, so I know straight away the heights for the 110 hurdles, the 400-meter races. But it's nice just to have a double check to make sure that when you go around the track, the clerk of the course or the stadium staff make sure they put it at the right height and weight. So you're checking to make sure. And the same thing is similar with the steeplechase crib sheet. It's just making sure then that the barriers are put on at the right time and they're in the right position on the track. So again, I carry a little steeplechase crib sheet with me. And the spirit level is basically like the wind gauge. You're just making sure that it's at the right level of the setup on the spirit level. So I carry a little spirit level just to make sure it's all correct. And a small tape measure, just for, again, checking the heights of the hurdles, the wind gauge. Brake line cones. Most stadiums do have their own brake line cones. But again, over the years, I've just built up a lot of stuff and I carry my own brake line cones that are used for 800s, 4x400s, things like that. Walkie-talkie radios. It's optional, but I do have some. So again, that's another way of communicating with my team. I might give them a radio and say, if you spot an infringement, can you radio into me what was the infringement, so that I can have that communication quickly. And in the last few years, I've been carrying spanners, 17-inch spanners with me, because some stadium staff don't have all the right spanners. And there's been occasions where I've been told, we don't have any spanners, you're the track referee, why haven't you got any? So now I'll carry spanners 17-inch to help adjust the steeplechase hurdles to the right height quickly and in time. So I carry those as well. So these are just some of the things, you know, that you may want to consider when you're in a role of referee to have in your bag as you go along to a meeting. But as I said there, you gain more experience as a referee, you'll customize the sort of equipment that you would need to put in your bag. Okay. Is there anything in the chat on that one, Matt?
Nope, you're all good, sir.
Okay. Any questions about anything else that you would put in the bag that's different as a referee that you could think of that I might have not included?
I'll throw a very important one in the mix for you, Noel.
Please. Yeah.
Bag of sweets.
Yes. Yes. Got to look after our officials. Yeah. Yes, that's a nice gesture. Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
And
Yes.
and before we kind of get into copyright issues, there are a whole number of manufacturers available.
Okay. Right. Moving on to the next slide then.
Okay then. So, who should we be introducing ourselves to on when we're going to events as the track referee? So the first of which, and this would still be the case if you were there as a track judge, is the meeting manager. One part, so they know that you are there. Equally, so you can do things like get yourself signed in. If there's any meal tokens or expenses forms to be arranged, you can do all of those things with the meeting manager. Your clerk, of course, if it's a county championships, or stadium staff if it is a local level meeting. It's always handy to know who you're working with and who's going to be responsible for what, especially if it's stadium staff. They, depending on the level of experience they have, it could be the first time that they've ever worked at an athletics event at their facility. Equally, it could be somebody with 20 years experience who knows exactly what they're doing. But as a referee, it's really, really important that you know who you're working with, because it might be that they need a little bit more support just to ensure key things like the hurdles are being set to the right heights, or that they're remembering to change toppling weights, things like that. The start team, it's always handy to know who your chief starters assistant is, as you may need to communicate with them through the day, especially for things such as recording any disqualifications at the start within the results, if that's been requested of you. Your chief timekeeper, so certainly at a local level meeting, you may well be spending a lot of time walking back and to see the chief timekeeper to pass over results. If you've got photo finishing operation, it's worth talking to your chief photo finish official, as they will be the person who hopefully are not printing any reversals for you as the day progresses, or if there are, if there's any queries around a finishing order, it would be the chief photo finish judge that you'd be liaising with. The results team, so especially if you're somebody like me who's got really poor handwriting, it's worth putting your apologies in early, as I always do, and ensuring that they know who you are and where you are should they have any queries about the results or anything that you're sending over to them. Finally, your team of officials. So you need, as a referee, you want to be able to know that you've actually got a team of officials and everybody who you're expecting to have arrived at an event has. Equally, if you're referee at a local league meeting where clubs are expected to provide officials, the earlier you know who you've got and what level of experience you've got, you can then start to think about, are the duties on the duty sheet appropriate for this person? So say if you've got a parent who's never picked up a clipboard before in their life, never judged a race, might you want to give them a lot of the key duties through the day, or might you wish to reconsider that, or say buddy them up with a more experienced official within the team? So I can't see any questions in the chat, but are there any questions from anyone about who you need to be talking to and go and say hello to when you're a track referee at an event?
The only thing I'd just add to that, Dominic, and to everybody else, the reason why is at the end of the day, at a meeting, we're all one team. So we're working together to make sure that the event can go off smoothly. So you need information from those and they need information from you to make this happen. So by communicating with each other, you're making sure that that event can go as smoothly as possible. So it's always good just to meet up with everybody and introduce yourself to make sure that the meeting can go off as smoothly as possible. So that's why I think it's quite important that you do try and introduce yourself on arrival when you go to a meeting. Next slide. Right. So you've arrived. You're at a league or county meeting. Personally, me as a referee, I try and arrive at least 60 minutes before. If it's a venue I've never been before, I'll probably try and get there at least 90 minutes before the first track event. It's just basically to get familiar with the surroundings. Yes, I know it's a track and it's round, but there's little things I want to check to make sure I'm familiar with the surroundings. So as a referee, I'd like to get at least between 60 and 90 minutes before the first track event. And the first thing is get your lunch. Well, yeah, sort out your expenses form if the host club are offering it to you. And yeah, collect any lunch tickets that's available. So you're going to be, well fed, hopefully, by the host club. And again, meeting the relevant teams, as Dominic has mentioned earlier on. If there's the meeting manager there, you want to know if there's any changes, any queries before you start. And just if you need to collect things like radios to speak to the other teams, it's quite important. And yeah, just find out how many officials you've got as well, just in case, you've had any dropouts. So the earlier there, the more you can plan ahead for any scenarios that may crop up that you weren't expecting. Once you've done all that, have a walk around the track. As I said, I know it's all familiar, it's 8 lanes or 6 lanes, but just check everything because you've got a duty of care. At the end of the day, you want to make sure that everything is looking okay. There's no holes in the track, for example. Look at the curbing. Is it a problem? Is it curbs coming up on the track if it's got the metal curbing? You just want to check everything. Steeplechase barriers, what conditions are they in for the athletes that are going to be jumping them? Are they safe? And you're checking things, the hurdles, anything that doesn't look right and you're not comfortable. Do you want that race or event to go ahead? Report it to the host or the meeting manager. So have a good look around the track facilities and make sure you're happy that everything is all in order. So again, that's one of the things I do before the meeting starts. Another thing is checking with the stadium staff to make sure they've got an up-to-date timetable. You don't want them putting out the hurdles at 12 o'clock when they should have been out at 11 o'clock. So, just making sure that they got the right timetable and they know when the equipment needs to go out. So I always try and meet the stadium staff quickly just to make sure I've got them on board, they're working with me, they've got the right timetable. And do they need any help from the track team? You can guarantee that there's always help that's needed to put hurdles out and adjust hurdles. And if you can play your part with your team, it makes sure that the event can run to time. At a bigger meeting like the county championships, then normally they would have an appointed clerk of the course. Now, for those who are not sure what a clerk of the course is, they're responsible for making sure the track is kept clear and making sure that things like the hurdles, the steeplechase barriers, all are put out at the right time to make sure that the event goes to time. And they work with you, the track referee. But at the lower meetings, like the league meetings, there's usually sometimes you have to do it yourself and just check everything yourself to make sure that all the equipment is in the right place. There is some stadium staff, but they may need a little more support. So just be prepared that you may have to play a part there in checking everything that's going out at the right time. So it's just, you know, be very aware of what you need to be doing and making sure that in your preparations you're happy with the facilities, the equipment, before you have your briefing with your team. Okay. Any questions on the arrival time and what to look for, and any questions on that before we go to the next slide? Anything you want to add to it, or anything that you're not sure? You're all very quiet. Anyway, we'll go to the next slide. I'm sure if there's any questions, we can come back to it a bit later.
Okay, and so to continuing on with what happens on the day when you referee at a county or league meeting. Make sure your officials are aware of where you want them to congregate and meet, and if you are having a briefing, at what time. The obvious location for any briefing is always your judges' stand, as that's naturally where we congregate towards as track judges. At the briefing, make sure you've got all your appointed officials and do introductions to the team. Now, it may be that you've got officials who work together every week of the summer and everybody knows everybody, and it might not necessarily be appropriate. But equally, there could be new officials or officials who don't work together very often. So it's always worth just having a quick kind of round the circle of who everybody is in the team, so everybody gets to know their colleagues and their team members for the day. If you haven't already, hand out duty sheets and make sure all your team understand what the duties are. Again, if you've got newer track judges who are learning the ropes, they may not necessarily know all of the abbreviations straight away, so it's always worth checking in with your team. Cover any information or all the key information at the briefing, so have your team signed in, have they collected lunch, have they organised any expenses forms if they're on offer at the event. Also, your key health and safety information. So, do we know if you've got a fire drill planned for that day? If there is an evacuation alarm, where do you and your team need to go and congregate? One thing I always do when I'm a referee at an event, I'll ask my team if there is an evacuation, that we all congregate together once we get to that evacuation point. So I know as a referee, exercising my duty of care to my team of officials, that everybody is safe and everybody's being accounted for. And if not, then I know I can tell the relevant authorities straight away who may be missing. Infringement reporting. So as Noel's talked through earlier, there's a few different ways you could ask your team to signal to you. So it's always good to clarify that and make sure everybody knows, whether it be you're using a radios or signal cards or a good old-fashioned walk back round to the stand. Everybody knows where they stand and what's expected of them. As a referee, you can exercise discretion not to disqualify, but warn athletes who are in the under 17 age groups and younger. So there are certain rules where it's not quite as black and white as you see it at the at a national level. We can use some discretion and choose to talk to athletes and point them in the right direction rather than disqualify straight away. And it's always worth considering as a referee when you go into an event, what age groups am I working with? You may wish to take a different approach to, say, a senior athlete than you might with an under 13 who's never raced on a track before. If you've got equipment such as a wind gauge, there are various makes, models out there. It's worth checking in with your team to make sure that they know how it works. And if they don't, going and having a walk down your wind gauge and a quick demonstration and a bit of a show and tell, if you will, before the event starts. And be prepared to answer any questions regarding matters arising. So it might be that you have at a league meeting queries from team managers. So for an example, I was at a league meeting yesterday and the track referee was asked, could a club put some guest relay teams in? So there's always these little quirks of things people either within your team of umpires or coaches, team managers, or athletes at an event may come and ask you. And there are a wide variety of things you could be asked as a track referee. So unless there's any questions, I'll hand back to Noel for the next slide.
Okay, thank you, Dominic. So the competition's underway now. You, as the track referee, your position is normally at the end of the finishing straight by the judges' stand. And throughout the competition, you're just making sure that all the rules of the competition, league rules, competition rules are being adhered to. You're also, having given your duty sheet to your umpires, you're just checking as well, just to make sure they are where they should be. You don't want them in a position where they're not, and then an infringement occurs and that umpire wasn't there in the position. So I'm always scanning around just to making sure they are where they are and they're there on time for each event. Other things as well, there's a little bit of admin as well. So I keep a little folder, and in that folder, I'd have a start list, especially if it's like a county championships. I'll have an infringement sheet. I'll have the competition prospectus and things like that. So I keep everything all tidy at a little desk with me. And I'm still just checking everything, what's going out throughout the day. I'm communicating with the other people, as we mentioned before, start team, technical team, if there's a technical team, technical manager at a higher level, like county championships, results team. So I'm always in communication with everybody. And slightly some meetings, like maybe the county championships and regional championships, you'll have radios. So if you're not new to using a radio, you need to know the actual criteria. So if I need to speak to the photo finish team, I'd say on the radio, photo finish, this is track referee, over. And then I'll wait for the response. And then I would say athlete number 342, disqualified, rule 17.3.1. So just to ensure that you follow the right etiquette when you are using a radio, so to communicate to other officials. That's one thing you might be new to you when you start being a referee at a level of, especially the county championships, just to get an idea of how to use the radio and communicate with each team. Another thing, at a county championship, just need to be aware of qualifications to subsequent rounds. This is actually decided in advance. So you may get a situation, and it's happened to me quite a few times, where there's a qualifying criteria and two athletes are tying for the position of the last qualifying to the next round. And the timekeeper or the photo finish comes up to you and say, athlete number 100 and athlete number 101 have tied on times, so we can't split them. So we need to decide who advances to the next round. And if you haven't come across this before, you're going to think, oh my gosh, what do I do? How am I going to sort this out? So I've just put a little question on there. If that happened to you as a referee at a county championship and two athletes have tied on times and you need one of them to be advancing to the next round, what would you do to resolve the situation? Is there anybody there would like to just give me their thoughts on how you would progress that situation?
Now, I would say, ladies and gents, as a field judge on this call, I've come out with many daft questions from a track perspective, but believe me, there's no question or no comment that's ever Okay, we've got a comment in the chat. Positions / count back. No.
Sorry?
Count back potentially.
I couldn't quite catch that. Sorry, Mark.
Sorry, count back.
Paper?
Yeah, count back. Sorry, no. Kind of, counting back, but would that be applicable to track, or would that just be field?
Couldn't understand what that you said there, Mark. Sorry. Can you?
Yeah, it was my comments. It's Mervyn here. I'll just sort of recite that one for you.
Yeah.
If it was field, you might have a count back on number of attempts at a jump or number of attempts or something. I was just wondering if there had been a number of heats, whether there'd be a count back situation of heats for as you progress towards semi-final and final on a running event, or conceivably, if they'd clashed on time, was there an issue about position?
For example, this is a scenario where it's actually done on times, because the actual competition provider can say it's on times or place. So in this scenario, it's on time. So they've both actually got the same time of 100 meters, 12 seconds dead. So the referee in this situation would have to get the two athletes together to decide who goes to the next round. So there's scenarios that have come up. They could have a runoff to decide who goes to the next race. Or one of the athletes might say, I don't want to progress to the next round. You can. But now the best way to resolve the situation, if you get that, where two athletes tied on time, you would draw lots to decide which one goes to the next round. You take it out of the hands of the athletes, you just draw lots. So again, one of the things I have in my bag, or I speak to the starters, I have some of the numbers, hip numbers, 1 to 8. I call the two athletes together and I explain to them, you've both actually equaled times to the next round. So to decide who goes through, I say, we're going to draw lots, and the one with the highest number gets through to the next round. So if one athlete picks up the hip number 2 and the athlete picks up hip number 8, then that athlete number 8 will go through to the next round. So that's the way we do it, because it's just takes it out of the athlete's hand and you've made that decision, and it works. I haven't had a problem. So that's what you would do to resolve the situation. You get the two athletes together, explain what's happened, and then you just draw lots. Okay. Any other questions? Anybody have any thoughts on that? Do you think it's fair? You may come across that in the county championships. So just to, have a thought of how you would deal with this if it does come up. So just something to think about if it does come up in your role as a track referee at a county championships or a regional championships. Okay. And then one of the other things I've put down here is checking hurdles, barriers before the race commences. It's your responsibility. So for example, it could be 110 meters men's hurdles race. The stadium staff have put the hurdles all out and they've put them on the lines that they should be. Before the race starts, you should have a check just to make sure they are on the right colour markings and they're at the right height and the right weight, because it's your responsibility. The start team will actually come to you and say to you, the referee, are you happy with the height of the hurdles, the positions on the track? So have a quick check just to make sure that they are right, because if they are wrong and they've been put on the wrong line and the wrong height, you're going to get the blame, and the chances are you may have to rerun the race at a later time during the day if there's time in that meeting. So please be aware that at the end of the day, when it comes to checking hurdles and barriers, just make sure you're happy before you give the race clear that they are where they should be on the track at the right height and weight. Okay. And then checking results. You may get a lot of reversals, especially in sprints, 100 meters. And the photo finish have great pleasure in coming down to you and say positions 1, 2, and 3 have been reversed in the 100 meters. So check them just to make sure, because mistakes can happen. And any reversals, just show them to your team so they can actually see what was the official results. So as a referee, you would just also do that as part of your role at during the competition. So these are just things that crop up and things you need to be doing and be aware of while you're in the competition area during the races that's going on and the event. Any questions? Before we move on to the next slide, I'm conscious of time. Dominic, would you like to put the next slide up?
Yeah, apologies. It's just been a little slow to come through.
Okay.
So, disqualifications then. So there's something, as a track referee, you may have to, at a league or county meeting, disqualify an athlete for an infringement. Now, if you do decide to disqualify based on the report of one of your umpires, it's really, really important you have the conversation with the athlete as soon as possible. So if it's, you know, an 800 meters break line infringement, for example, if your athletes are congregating at the finish line, if you've got your report from your umpire, you're satisfied that's the course of action you want to take, go and talk to the athlete immediately and explain to them what they've done wrong and why you're disqualifying them. There's nothing worse for an athlete, parent and coaches than getting home and looking at the results online and then seeing they've been disqualified and they might not necessarily know why. If you are disqualifying an athlete, ensure that you're getting an infringement form completed. So as I think Mark's put in the chat, he'll include the link as part of the post-session resources. Keep a few in your bag and ensure they're filled out. And when your umpires fill them out, make sure that they're completed in pen as well, just because anything in pen can't be changed as easily. And that's not to say that somebody might want to, but it takes away any accusation that way. When you're talking to athletes, explain it to them in a calm, confident manner. So if there is something, you add a little demonstration. So if it's say running on or over the line, it's really useful for an athlete for actually you to go, right, so this is what you've done, put your foot on the line, show them exactly where they've gone wrong, and then they know for next time. If an athlete or coach is unhappy with a decision you've made and they wish to protest, the protest should be made to yourself as the track referee immediately after the event or when the results are published. And the really important one with your decision is your decision as the track referee is final. Whatever you come up with is the final decision. People may not agree with it, people may not like it. Unfortunately, that is part of your role as a track referee, to ensure the rules are followed for everybody and it's the fairest race possible.
Oh, that's me. Hey. I was just looking at some of the questions in the chat, so apologies. Yeah, we'll come to that in a bit. Right. It's come to the end of the meeting then. So it's been a success. Everybody's had a really good time. When it comes to the results, this is not mandatory. It's what I do, but I try and keep a copy of the track results. The reason why is just in case after the meeting there's some queries, and I like to keep the copies probably for about 7 days, just to deal with any queries that might crop up after the meeting. You usually find, if it's like, for example, the photo finish or the results team, they may ask you at the beginning, would you like a copy of the results? at the end of the meeting. And I usually say yes, so I can just check anything that needs checking, or like I say, there's any queries. And for me personally, I'm always trying to learn, and you never stop learning. So I want to make notes of what I felt went well or what didn't go well, and use that as part of my development. Yes, I do develop still after all these years. You're still learning. What could I have done better? So yeah, I'm always, conscious of trying to make the experience for myself and the rest of my team go as well as possible. And yeah, if by any chance you need to give feedback to the officials, good, constructive, try and do it in a positive manner to make sure that official has got, as much much feedback in a way that's going to inspire them to carry on, be successful, want to keep coming back. So I always try and give feedback in a positive manner to all the officials, especially if they ask for it, because some do and some don't. And looking at the next bit there where it says new to the role, Dominic's a perfect example. Always ask for experience from other officials to see, how he can improve and do better in his role. Some are a bit frightened to do that, but please, if you're an aspiring referee going to a level 2 or level 3, please ask questions. We're here to help. Don't be afraid. We want you to be progressing and be, really good officials at referee level. And the more you do it, the more you get feedback from other officials and referees, the more you learn and the better you will be. So yeah, don't be afraid to ask experienced officials for some feedback. And of course, after you've finished all the sweets, you thank all the officials for their work at the meeting, and of course, have a safe journey, and hopefully you'll be working with them again. So yeah, the usual things at the end of the meeting that you would expect as a referee. We've got about 6 minutes left, so I think this question and answers is my next bit. So is there some stuff in the chat there that you've got, Matt, that I did see? Mark?
Yeah, so there was a question about have you ever been challenged, or have you ever challenged the photo finish result, or have you had any need to challenge the photo finish result?
I've challenged them, and I've looked at the pictures, and I've said, well, I disagree. I think that athlete was first or second, but usually, I've got to be honest, photo finish still wins because they've got the hard picture as evidence. So in the end, yes, I do challenge, but at the end of the day, the photo finish is usually right at the end.
And a question, sorry, apologies. And there was a question about if hurdles are old and slightly warped, is there a preference for them being aligned across the course at the base or at the top? With as hurdles age, and sometimes the tops get a bit warped in terms of aligning them. What would you suggest is a good way to try and ensure that they're aligned?
Well, try and find some spare hurdles if possible. That's the first thing. Checking to make sure there's any spare hurdles to replace them with, but it's a tricky one because they should be to a certain level, and I don't like putting hurdles on if I think they're not up to the standard. So I would be trying to find some spare hurdles to replace the ones that look a bit iffy, because we don't want athletes to get injured.
Thank you very much. And also a question about the exact positions that cones are placed at the break line.
What do you think, Ali? Where it should be? Just throwing it back.
It was just at the last meet. I just couldn't remember if they were as you approached the line or as you went through it. And that's what I wanted to just, I looked it up, I just couldn't seem to find it in the rule book.
Well, the break line cones go on the intersection, just in front of the green break line. Not on the line, not over, just in front on the intersection.
So it's as the athlete approaches the line?
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good question, Ali. Any additional questions, ladies and gents? Honestly, I asked the most daftest questions, so believe me, nothing can be compared against me myself. So, no,
Yes, Mervyn,
go.
thinking of a track steward, it can be useful to have a lever arch file, yeah, and weights to stop the sheets blowing away. Yes, I do have that. I've got 3 paper weights that I use to keep all the paper, and I also got a little wooden clipboard, and I put clips on it to clip my paperwork to as well. So that's another thing you can use to keep the papers from stop blowing away.
You're not suggesting though we have windy weather in the UK, are you?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
But kind of, if there's no additional questions, ladies and gents, as I kind of articulated at the start of the session, this is part of a series of webinars for all disciplines for levels 1 to 3, and I know kind of we've talked quite a bit tonight about kind of some of the communication equipment and stuff like that, that you would need to take towards an event, etc. All I would say is, don't worry kind of about kind of any huge bits of equipment and stuff like that. As Noel said, you'll pick things up as you go along. But a lot of stadiums will provide a lot of stuff as well. As I've articulated, there'll be a number of resources that I'll send out to everyone after this call, including kind of hurdles and height and weight kind of specifications, and a whole number of resources, including a link to tonight's session, as well as all the previous sessions that we've run for all the other disciplines. It's every day is a school day in officiating. I can say, I'm sure on behalf of Noel and Dom as well, we're all here to support each other as officials. We all learn from each other, and as long as you enjoy your officiating at every single meeting, that's the benefit of being an official in athletics, is you never stop learning and you have a great dose of fun along the way. So I think kind of just to complete things off, I think it's been a great session. I just want to thank Noel and Dom for their presenting skills and their knowledge, etc. tonight. Has been fantastic, and well done to you both. And what I will do is, for colleagues are from the other home, from the various home countries, I'll put contacts for each of the home countries to contact. For those that reside in England, it's yours truly here. So I will certainly provide my details in amongst that as well. But I will stop the recording now. But what I will